For 6 decades, his voice carried the heartbeat of soul music, the sound of joy, pain, and faith that moved generations. Love Train, Backstabbers, and For the Love of Money weren't just hits. They were hymns of survival sung by a man who has outlived nearly everyone who once shared his stage. Now at 83, Eddie Levert stands as one of the last true kings of soul, a living echo of an era that believed music could heal even the deepest wounds. But before the fame, before the gold records and the heartbreaks, he was just a hungry boy in Alabama, singing under the weight of dreams too heavy for his years, chasing a sound that would one day define his life. If you love timeless stories of music, memory, and legacy, subscribe now and stay with us till the end. Roots in Bessemer, Alabama, Great Migration to Ohio. Eddie Levert's story began in Bessemer, Alabama, a small steel town where the air smelled of iron and red clay dust clung to everything. Life there was simple but harsh. His parents were working class, proud, disciplined, and deeply faithful. They didn't have much, but what they did have was music and church. On Sunday mornings, gospel hymns drifted from open windows, and a young Eddie would sit on the front steps, listening as voices rose and blended like prayers carried on heat. Those songs taught him the rhythm of resilience long before he ever dreamed of fame. His mother believed singing was a gift, a calling that could lift a soul out of poverty even for a moment. His father taught him something different, that a man's voice means nothing without hard work to back it. Together, those lessons shaped the boy who would one day move the world with his voice. But in the Alabama of the 1940s, opportunity was rare, especially for black families trying to build a future. When the mills slowed and the paychecks stopped coming, the Leverts packed what little they owned and joined thousands heading north. Their journey to Canton, Ohio was more than a relocation. It was an act of faith. The winters were cold, the rent high, but hope felt closer there. Eddie's voice became the family's warmth on nights when the furnace went silent. He sang in church choirs, on porches, and later in small local halls, his voice deepening with every hardship. Each note carried the sound of his mother's prayers and his father's resolve. Music became his shelter, his rebellion, and eventually his destiny. It kept him warm when the winters didn't, and soon it would have to feed him too. Top of form garage groups, the dream that wouldn't die. In Canton, Ohio, where factory whistles marked time and dreams were something you carried quietly, a teenage Eddie Levert found his calling in song. With a voice that could shift from velvet to thunder, he became the heartbeat of a small circle of friends who refused to believe that poverty defined them. They rehearsed wherever sound could bounce, garages, church basements, even empty lots under streetlights. They called themselves the Triumphs, then the Mascots, long before the world would ever know them as the OJs. They were broke but fearless. Borrowed microphones, mismatched suits, and borrowed cars carried them from one small club to another. Some nights, they sang for 5 people and a sandwich. Other nights, they slept in the car using jackets for blankets and laughter for warmth. The rejection letters piled up. Record labels said their sound was too raw, their look too ordinary. But Eddie and Walter Williams, his closest brother in music and in faith, refused to quit. When bandmates drifted away chasing steady paychecks, the two of them stayed. They sang in stairwells until sunrise, their harmonies echoing off the concrete like a promise to themselves. They didn't have money, but they had belief in their sound, in each other, and in the music that refused to let them give up. In time, their blend of gospel grit and street rhythm began to catch ear. A Cleveland DJ named Eddie OJ took notice, playing their records and mentoring them through early gigs. They renamed the group in his honor, the OJs, and that single decision changed everything. It would take years before success arrived, but that hunger forged something unbreakable: brotherhood. They had nothing, and yet together they had everything that mattered. And just when it seemed nobody was listening, Philadelphia breakthrough. Philadelphia International and hit era. By the early 1970s, the dream Eddie carried from Alabama had finally found its sound in Philadelphia International Records, the new soul capital of America. Producers Kenny Gamble and Leon Huff had built a label that could turn faith into rhythm, and they saw something rare in the OJs: They didn't just sing notes, they preached truth. Under their guidance, the group became unstoppable. The hits came like fire: Backstabbers, Love Train, For the Love of Money, and I Love Music. Each song carried both joy and warning, gospel wrapped in groove, messages about loyalty, unity, and survival. For Eddie, it was redemption. The boy who once sang to stay warm was now lighting up arenas across the world. Fans wept, danced, and believed every word that came from that deep, commanding voice. But behind the rhythm and applause, another story was unfolding, one of exhaustion and sacrifice. The OJs toured relentlessly, sometimes performing over 200 shows a year, days blurred into months of airplanes, hotels, and rehearsal rooms. Eddie's voice grew hoarse, his energy waned, but the spotlight demanded more. The success machine had no brakes. Financial troubles followed. For all the gold records and sold-out tours, the group's contracts left them earning less than they deserved. Eddie would later admit that fame taught him two truths: the music business is beautiful on stage, and brutal behind it. Still, they kept singing. The harmonies grew tighter, the crowds larger. For a while, the roar of thousands drowned out the fatigue and the loneliness that came with living on the road. They were legends now, symbols of hope, resilience, and soul. But success, Eddie would later say softly, didn't just pay him, it started taking things too. Quick pause. If stories like this touch your heart, tap subscribe and stay with us for more untold journeys of music and legacy. The price of fame, money, exhaustion, and silent houses. By the time the OJs became household names, Eddie Levert had reached the peak of everything he'd once dreamed of. The crowds knew every lyric, the awards kept coming, the checks were bigger than he'd ever imagined. But while the world saw triumph, his home life told another story. His marriage to Martha Bird Levert, the woman who had believed in him long before the fame, began to buckle under the weight of absence. The tours were endless, thousands of miles, months away, birthdays missed, milestones forgotten. Martha raised their sons, Gerald and Sean, while Eddie sang for strangers. When he returned home, he found his children taller, older, and distant. The applause he chased began to sound hollow compared to the quiet that waited behind his own door. He could afford mansions now, but not peace. The money bought comfort, not closeness. Eddie tried to bridge the gap with gifts, guitars, clothes, promises that he'd be home next time. But fame has a way of feeding on time, and time is the one thing he could never buy back. Eventually, the silence between him and Martha grew too wide to cross. They separated quietly, away from headline. No bitterness, just the shared understanding that love can fade under the noise of success. Eddie poured his pain into his music, singing harder than ever, maybe to fill the void, maybe to drown it. He later reflected, "The stage became my only home. The songs were the only thing that still listened." The man who taught the world about love was learning what it cost to lose it. He thought losing a marriage was pain, but the worst was still waiting. Father and sons, Gerald and Sean, step into the spotlight. As the spotlight on Eddie Levert began to dim in the late 1980s, a new one flickered to life, this time on his sons, Gerald and Sean. Both had grown up surrounded by microphones and melodies, watching their father transform pain into performance. Music was in their blood, running through generations like inheritance. Gerald, the eldest, carried his father's fire, a voice of velvet and thunder that could lift a crowd to its feet. Sean, quieter but no less gifted, found his rhythm in harmonies, steady and sure. Eddie's pride was unmistakable. He called them his echoes, saying, "When I hear them sing, it's like hearing my own heart twice." Father and sons began performing together, the most memorable being their duet, "Baby Hold On To Me." To the world it was a soul classic. To Eddie it was something far deeper, a conversation between generations. The song's plea, "I'm still the same man I used to be," felt like a message both ways, a father reminding his son of love, and a son promising to carry his legacy forward. Backstage, Gerald often teased his dad, "You might have started the train, Pops, but I'm driving it now." Eddie would laugh, his eyes full of pride, knowing he was watching the continuation of something eternal. Fans adored the Levert family, the father who defined old school soul and the sons who carried it into a new era. But behind the laughter and music, life had its own rhythm, one that would soon shift from harmony to heartbreak. Eddie couldn't have known it yet, but the songs they sang together would one day become the only way he could still hear his son's voices. And then on a quiet morning in 2006, the phone rang. 2006, losing Gerald. That phone call shattered everything. Gerald Levert, just 40 years old, was gone. For a man who had sung through every kind of pain, Eddie suddenly found himself facing a silence too heavy for song. When news broke, the world mourned a soul legend, but for Eddie it wasn't a headline. It was his firstborn, his reflection, his joy. The church overflowed with fans, friends, and fellow musicians. The air was thick with grief and gospel. The choir sang softly, their voices trembling under the weight of what had been lost. On the front row sat Eddie, head bowed, hands clasped tight around a gold microphone, the same one Gerald had used during their final concert together. When the music started, he tried to sing "Baby Hold On to Me" one last time. Halfway through, his voice broke, and the audience quietly finished the song for him. Thousands of voices carried the words his heart couldn't. He later said, "That was the day my soul cracked open. I used to sing for love, after that I sang just to survive." Nights grew long and quiet. The laughter that once filled his home faded into echoes. He kept Gerald's photos on the piano, beside a candle he lit every morning. For months he didn't step on stage. The world kept turning, but Eddie stood still, a father holding on to the last sound of his son's laughter. He often whispered, "You were my rhythm, son." Now every song feels offbeat. It was grief beyond measure, yet even in the darkness, Eddie still believed that somehow music could carry him through. But grief wasn't finished with him, not even close. 2008, losing Sean too. 2 years after Gerald's passing, when the pain had barely begun to heal, Eddie Levert received another call, the kind that tears the heart open a second time. His younger son, Sean Levert, had died at just 39. The news felt unreal. Eddie's knees buckled. The room spun. How could one father bury 2 sons in 2 years? Sean's death was sudden, following complications from illness and stress during his time in custody. According to CBS News, singer Sean Levert dies at 39. The singer was rushed to a Cleveland hospital after falling ill and later passed away, sending shockwaves through the music world and leaving Eddie devastated. At the funeral, Eddie placed the same gold microphone atop the casket, the same one Gerald had once used. The choir sang softly, but Eddie couldn't join this time. His voice, once his lifeline, refused to come. The lyrics of "Love Train" drifted through the air, a song once of joy now heavy with loss. When he finally returned to the stage, something had changed. His tone carried an ache, a trembling truth that every parent who's ever grieved could feel. He said quietly, "Losing one child changes you. Losing 2, it erases who you were." But grief wasn't finished with him, not even close. Quick reminder, love classic soul and true Hollywood stories? Subscribe now, more powerful tales are on the way. Quiet Love, Second Chance, Raquel and daughter Ryan. After years of chaos, grief, and endless touring, Eddie Levert found something unexpected. Peace. Her name was Raquel, a woman who entered his life not with fame or fanfare, but quiet understanding. She didn't see the legend on stage, she saw the weary man behind it. With her, Eddie discovered a gentler rhythm, dinners at home, long talks on the patio, and mornings that didn't begin with airports or soundcheck. Together they built a new life between Las Vegas and Canton, Ohio. A balance between the glamour of the stage and the grounding of home. Raquel gave him the space to heal and the courage to start again. Then came their daughter Ryan, born in 2002, the light that turned his twilight years into something golden. She was everything Eddie thought he'd lost: laughter, hope, and the future. He was an older, softer father this time, braiding her hair, helping with homework, telling bedtime stories about her brothers. The house, once haunted by silence, now echoed with laughter and gospel music again. In interviews, Eddie admitted, "Ryan gave me back my reason to smile." Raquel often said he became a different man, slower to anger, quicker to hug. The family's love became his refuge. They planted a small garden together in the desert sun, and in those moments, the man who had lost so much found himself thankful just to be alive. The world still saw the soul legend, but within those walls, he was simply Dad. He had survived storms no heart should endure. For the first time in decades, life seemed kind again, but in 2024, life reached for the last unbroken piece of his heart. 2024, losing Ryan to lupus. The call came just before Christmas, the same kind that had shattered his heart twice before. His daughter Ryan, his youngest and his peace, had been battling lupus, a disease that punishes the strong. For years Eddie stood beside her through hospital visits and late-night prayers, whispering, "You've got my strength, baby." As reported by Soap Central, what happened to Eddie Levert's sons Sean and Gerald Levert? Daughter Ryan passes away. Ryan's death in 2024 followed a long fight with lupus. A loss that left Eddie mourning all three of his children. The article captured the heartbreak of a father who, even after decades of survival, faced the unthinkable one final time. At her funeral, sunlight poured through stained glass, catching the purple lupus ribbon draped across her casket. When the choir sang, Eddie whispered, "Keep singing, Daddy, I'll be listening." The final words Ryan had written him in a folded note. He still carries it everywhere. He later told friends that her courage rekindled his faith. That's why he began funding lupus research foundations and student scholarships in her memory, ensuring her light helped others live. So how does a man who has buried almost everyone still stand on stage because love and music are the only things that never leave. Brothers in song who disappeared. Even beyond his family, Eddie's life has been defined by loss. The OJ's, once 5 boys from Canton chasing a dream, are now mostly gone, their harmonies preserved only on vinyl and in memory. William Powell, the group's moral compass, died young from cancer in 1977, just as the world began to recognize his brilliance. Bill Iles, one of the founders who helped build the group's earliest sound, passed away quietly decades later. Bobby Massey, who shared the road and hunger in those early days, left the group before fame, his story fading into history. And then there was Frankie Little Jr., the guitarist whose disappearance in 1982 remained a haunting mystery for nearly 40 years. It wasn't until DNA testing in 2021 that his remains were finally identified, closing a chapter that had long haunted those who remembered him. For Eddie, it was like losing his brothers all over again. Now in his 80s, he looks across the stage during sound checks and sees empty spaces where his friends once stood. The laughter, the bickering, the shared meals on tour buses, all gone. Only Walter Williams, his lifelong friend and partner, remains beside him, their bond unshaken after 6 decades. Sometimes, when the crowd is gone and the lights are dim, Eddie lingers on stage alone, hand resting on the microphone he's carried for most of his life. He swears he can still hear them: Williams' laugh, Frankie's guitar, Bobby's low harmony, rising and fading in the air. And yet, he once said softly, "Every night, I can still hear them harmonizing." Top of form legacy and reflection at 83. Today, Eddie Levert divides his time between Las Vegas and Canton, Ohio. One city of neon lights, the other of quiet memories. His home is lined with framed photographs: Gerald's confident smile, Sean's calm eyes, Ryan's joyful grin. Each picture reminds him of both the beauty and the cost of the life he's lived. He still performs occasionally, but now the applause feels more like prayer than celebration. When he sings, it's for them, the family, the brothers, the friends who didn't make it this far. Between shows, he donates to the Lupus Foundation and scholarship funds in Ryan's name, turning grief into giving. Midway through a March 2025 interview, Kiss FM Detroit, Eddie Levert on his legacy, work ethic, and new music, a lesson in greatness, captured his reflection perfectly. "I just thank God I can still sing for them. That's my healing." The man who once sang of love and heartbreak now sings of endurance. At 83, Eddie Levert stands as a symbol of faith through loss, proof that some voices never fade. They simply change key, because pain fades, but a voice like his keeps singing long after the lights go down. If Eddie Levert's story moved you, subscribe for more timeless journeys of music, loss, and legacy.